I welcome you all to Group 1 Mains English Medium coaching and classes on Paper 4 Indian Economy and Development. Today's topic is poverty and unemployment. I am Dr. E. Pavani, subject expert from Government City College from Department of Economics. In poverty and unemployment, we try to cover the following contents. The first one is concepts of poverty, where we try to check out what is absolute poverty and relative poverty. Apart from absolute and relative poverty, what are the new developments which have taken place in the recent years pertaining to the evolution of modern concepts of poverty, income-based poverty and non-income-based poverty, which has become the talk of the world in the recent times, Human Development Index and Capability Approach, which was developed by Amartya Sen, measurement of poverty, how the poverty is measured in India, and what are the trends in the poverty, concept and types of unemployment, estimates of unemployment and trends of unemployment. These are some of the important contents which are going to be covered in concise manner so as to encourage you to provide you an idea pertaining to how you can prepare the analysis for each and every question which is going to be asked under poverty and unemployment under Indian economy. If you come to the definition and relevance of poverty and unemployment, you can see here the definition of the poverty. Poverty can be defined as a situation where people are unable to meet or satisfy basic needs of life. Every human being has food, clothing and shelter as basic needs, and if a human being is unable to meet these basic needs in his day-to-day life, such a person is said to be suffering from poverty, and such a condition is called as poverty. Then unemployment can be defined as a state of worklessness for a person who is able to and willing to. Unemployment can be defined as a state of worklessness for a person who is able and willing to work at current wage rate. It is a situation of involuntary idleness. For example, if there is a person who is having the ability, that is capacity to work, and is also willing to work at the current wage rate, whether the wage rate is high or low, irrespective of the present current wage, if he is having the capacity to work and willingness to work, but still he is not provided with sufficient amount of working hours, such a kind of situation is called as unemployment. It can also be called as the situation of involuntary idleness. If you come to what is the relevance of poverty and unemployment, usually under the development process, every country confronts with these two problems, that is poverty and unemployment, and a country is going to acquire the status of a developed economy only when these two problems, not only these two problems, any problem which arises during the process of development are going to be curtailed or reduced or maybe eradicated. So poverty and unemployment had been with India right from the beginning. I mean to say, after India got independence, when the Britishers have left India, by that time a rich economy transformed into a poor economy, and the problem of poverty and unemployment has become quite acute in the later part of after India acquired independence. So eradication of poverty and unemployment will help in the attainment of social justice and equal opportunities. The ultimate destination or the ultimate objective of any country or any government is to establish a socialistic society which can ensure social justice to each and every person living in the society, and every person, irrespective of caste, creed, religion or any kind of differences, is going to be provided with equal opportunities. So in the context of attainment of social justice and equal opportunities, poverty has to be eradicated, unemployment has to be reduced, more people should be provided with social justice, and people should be made to live happily, able to meet their basic necessities of life by providing with sufficient amount of salaries in the form of provision of number of working days, which is going to ensure good amount of standard of living for the population of any country as such. If you come to the concepts of the poverty, how many types of poverty are there? Basically speaking, poverty is of two types. Traditionally, this classification was very famous. One is absolute poverty and the other is relative poverty. Absolute poverty is also called as extreme poverty or abject poverty. A situation which involves the scarcity of basic food, clean water, health, shelter, education and information is called as absolute poverty. That is, when the persons are not able to get good amount of food, water, clean water and proper health facilities, proper shelter and proper education and even information also, such a type of poverty is called as absolute poverty. This kind of absolute poverty is quite common in the developing countries as well as underdeveloped countries when compared with the developed countries where absolute poverty is quite uncommon. Relative poverty is defined as a living standard compared to the economic standards of surrounding population. Relative poverty provides the tool for measuring income inequalities in the society. Relative poverty can prevail even in the developed countries, and the quantity or the intensity of relative poverty is more in developing countries when compared with the developed countries. It is measured as a percentage of the population with income less than some fixed proportion of median income. For example, if you take the three important classes into which the society is classified as lower income category people and middle income category people and high income category people, and a degree of comparison is utilized when compared with the higher degree category of the society. The lower income category of the people and the middle income category of people are said to be relatively poor. So this is how comparison is made possible through the relative poverty, and it is used to measure poverty in wealthy developed nations. Relative poverty is more in developed countries, while absolute poverty is more in developing economies. Then while the entire world was concentrating on relative poverty and how to eradicate relative poverty, and while the developing economies were concentrating on how to eradicate the absolute poverty, in the course of time, the modern concepts of poverty have come into existence where certain intellectuals started questioning that why poverty has to be related only to the income scarcity, why only the monetary aspects have to be taken into consideration. So once this intellectual grilling has taken place, a need has arrived to evolve modern concepts of poverty. So situational poverty occurring due to unexpected adverse events can also be one type of modern concept of poverty. Generational poverty, modern concepts include situational poverty. For example, suddenly if there are any natural calamities, suddenly there is any kind of pandemic, just as the COVID-19 has occurred, few people have become lost their jobs and they have lost their properties, or they have become suddenly poor. So such type of temporary poverty can be called as situational poverty, which is caused due to unexpected adverse events. If you come to generational poverty, from one generation to another generation, this problem of poverty is carried forward or is given as a property of inheritance. So if especially if poverty occurs in families where two generations were born and were living in poverty, such a type of poverty is called as generational poverty. Then we come to the rural poverty, which occurs in rural areas, especially with a population below 50,000 people. Because of the lower accessibilities to the modern amenities, whether it could be electricity, whether it could be health, proper educational facilities, proper information, everything is going to play an important role when we try to talk about this rural poverty. Coming to the urban poverty occurs in metropolitan areas with over 50,000 population in the form of limited accessibility, inadequate housing in the form of clumsy living conditions in slum areas, overcrowding and less social protection. So these are some of the important modern concepts of poverty which have come into existence with the changes in the time, changes in the traditions of the society, changes in the conceptual aspects in which poverty was looked upon. So modern concepts include the situational poverty, generational poverty, rural poverty and urban poverty. If you come to the trends in poverty, what do you mean by trends in poverty? Whether the poverty since times immemorial or maybe since 1947 onwards, basically if we speak about the development of the Indian economy. What was the trend in the poverty? Was it a positive trend, and was it a negative trend, or was it a neutral trend? Positive trend is whether it was increasing, negative trend whether it was decreasing, and neutral trend neither increasing nor decreasing, but it is remaining at the same level at which we have started the planning process for curtailing and reducing this poverty. So Asian Journal of Research on Business Economics and Management has given information about the poverty trend in 7 decades from 51 to 2011, almost 70 years. What had been the improvement in controlling the poverty? Overall incidence of poverty declined in urban areas and even rural India. Incidence of poverty is nothing but the number of head count ratio. Head count ratio is number of heads who are counted counted as the people or number of persons suffering from the problem of poverty. So incidence of poverty in this 7 decades period declined in rural areas as well as in urban areas, which shows a good improvement in the achievements of Indian economy. 54 and 55 was one historical year during which the maximum poverty level or percentage was 61.1%. And if you take 66 and 67, it is another historical year which has notified the highest amount of poverty in India, that is 62%. That means out of every 100, 62 people were suffering from absolute poverty. That is, they were not in a condition to get even the basic necessities of the life, and remaining, I think 38% were above the poverty line. So till mid-60s, poverty fluctuations were there. That is, sometimes poverty was increasing, sometimes poverty was decreasing, but no significant trend was noticed or shown till 1960s. Then if you take 70s and 80s decades, poverty started declined because during that particular time, government has taken special initiative to make poverty alleviation programs as important objective of the 5-year plans. That is, especially the 5th and 6th 5-year plans. If you try to understand the objectives of the 5-year plans, these 5-year plans were concentrating only on controlling the twin problems, or eradicating the problems, or reducing the intensity of the twin problems, that is poverty and unemployment. 1990s that we had the liberalization, privatization, globalization, after which the number of job opportunities not only increased in private sector, but even the standard of living has increased a lot. So in these decades, that is 1990s onwards, there was a significant and rapid declining trend in the poverty. So if you come to 1951 to 2011, the entire development plan period, poverty declined at 1.2 percentage points per year as per the contemporary data which is available on the internet. The amount of poverty declination rate was 1.2 percentage points. The second important aspect now is income-based poverty and non-income based poverty. Under income-based poverty, we try to measure poverty in terms of only the consumption, expenditures and income. And under non-income based poverty, we try to measure poverty based on non-income aspects such as education, life expectancy and accessibility to safe drinking water, etc. kinds of things. Income poverty is based on basic needs approach, and non-income poverty is also called as the multidimensional poverty, the new concept of poverty which has become popular in 2000 decade, where poverty is now seen not only as the problem arising due to lower incomes and lower consumption expenditures, but is also problem with multiple new dimensions, that when people are deprived of health opportunities or education or information or rights, then that particular deprivation situation can also be described as poverty with in a totality, and that poverty is nothing but the multidimensional poverty. So monetary aspects are prioritized by income-based poverty, and non-income based poverty prioritizes non-monetary aspects. Irrespective of this difference, both are interrelated, and those who are multidimensionally poor need not be income-based poor. So people can have good incomes, but still they may suffer from multidimensional poverty. They may be deprived of certain rights. They may be deprived of the possibility of getting a proper quality education. They may be deprived of getting quality health facilities. Then such kind of people, in spite of having good incomes or proper incomes, they can become multidimensionally poor. And increase in income levels can reduce even the incidence of MDP, that is multidimensional poverty. If we need to check out this multidimensional poverty and reduce the intensity of the multidimensional poverty, one of the important ways is to reduce the income-based poverty, because increase in incomes generally is going to open up the avenues for the purpose of reducing the incidence of multidimensional poverty. Then Human Development Index and Capability Approach. This capability approach was popularized by Amartya Sen, who has received a Nobel Prize in 1998 for his contribution towards welfare economics. He was the first person who has talked about a new approach, that was the capability approach. And he defined poverty as deprivation of persons' capabilities to live the life they have reason to value. So everybody will be living a life, and they want to value their life. But when they try to value their life and look towards life with a positive, significant attitude, they may be deprived of this looking towards the life because of the scarcity or deprivation of certain capabilities, which are called as persons' capabilities. And Human Development Index is a holistic kind of thing and a far-ranging approach also, which proposed the 5 freedoms which are important for a person to lead a happy life, where he can look towards his life as a very valuable life when he is not going to have these 5 freedoms deprived. What are these 5 freedoms? The first one is political freedom, especially civil rights, and economic facilities, especially access to credit. Everybody wants to have accessibility to credit for the purpose of opening up new businesses and eking out their living. Social opportunities, especially accessibility to good education, proper nutritious food, proper health, and other facilities which include information also, and accessibility even to technology in this information technology age. Transparency in relation, that is a society or every person wants to have a transparent relationship with the government, where they want to know what the government is doing for establishing a welfare society, guaranteeing social justice and equal rights. And in the same way, they also want that a kind of a government which is free of corruption and red tapeism, which is going to work towards the benefit and the betterment of not only the country but even its people also. And coming to the next one, protective security, that is people also want to have social security measures in case they suffer from other deprivations, and these social security measures may include unemployment doles or widow pensions or old age kind of security kind of things. So Amartya Sen, in collaboration with the political philosopher Martha Nussbaum, development economist Sudhir Anand, and economic theorist James Foster, emphasized that capabilities approach is a paradigm policy, an important policy, a newly shifted policy to the development of the human being. So this research inspired the United Nations for the creation of Human Development Index, and Human Development Index is a popular measure of human development that captures the capabilities in health, education, and income. Then what is the Human Development Index and how it is computed? It is a statistical tool which is a composite index of 3 important aspects, that is life expectancy, next is education, third is per capita income. Then it was developed by Pakistani economist Mehboob ul Haq in 2010, and this was popularly employed by United Nations Development Program. And since 2010, UNDP is using this Human Development Index for the purpose of calculating the Human Development Index rates of each and every country of the world. In 2022, the contemporary data tells that Norway topped the list by a score of 0.957, followed by Australia and Switzerland. And if you take the position of India ranked 132nd in 191 countries. And pertaining to the education dimension of Human Development Index, the mean years of schooling is taken into consideration. Pertaining to health, life expectancy at birth is taken into consideration. Pertaining to income, gross national income per capita is taken into consideration. So these 3 indicators a geometric mean of these three indices is taken. A geometric mean is nothing but it's a cube root of the product of three indices gives the value of Human Development Index. Then coming to the next part, how do we measure this poverty? Poverty, we have seen different concepts. We have seen the trends in the poverty. We have seen the modern concepts of poverty and the Human Development Index, which is popularly adopted by the entire world for measuring their capacities in controlling or eliminating or reducing the intensity of poverty. The official poverty line is the expenditure incurred to obtain the goods in a poverty line basket. So, basic necessities are like food, clothing and shelter are how much a person requires per day is calculated, and depending upon that the expenditure that is the price into quantity, the value is taken, and depending upon that aspect the poverty line is drawn or the poverty line is constructed depending upon the expenditure that has to be made by a person for getting these minimum basic needs. Then in the all India level, the poverty line was estimated as monthly per capita consumption expenditure of rupees 942 in rural areas. So, even this expenditure differs in rural areas and urban areas. In urban areas, if a person is able to spend 1407 rupees per day on his consumption expenditure, then he is said to be above poverty line and he is said to be not suffering from the poverty. But if his consumption expenditure is less than 1407 or 1407, he is said to be suffering from poverty. The same case in rural areas, if a person is not able to spend 942 rupees per capita as consumption expenditure per day, monthly, then it becomes he or that family is said to be, that person is said to be suffering from poverty or is considered as living below the poverty line. So, rupees 942 monthly per capita consumption expenditure in rural areas and rupees 1407 monthly per capita consumption expenditure in urban areas. Poverty can be measured in terms of number of people who are living below this poverty line, and incidence of poverty is expressed as the head count ratio. Then who has estimated poverty in India? The first estimation of poverty was made by Dadabhai Naoroji. In his famous book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, he stated that those whose spending is below the range of rupees 16 to rupees 35, they are per capita per year. This is per capita per year expenditure. Then such a kind of family is said to be suffering from poverty. Incidence of poverty is estimated in India. It is the Planning Commission which is responsible for estimation of the poverty depending upon the sample information given by National Sample Survey Organization. This National Sample Survey Organization usually does the sample surveys for the purpose of collecting information on consumer expenditures, and basing on this data related to consumer expenditures, incidence of poverty is estimated by Planning Commission. Poverty line calculation is since the Planning Commission is stopped to exist and in its place Niti Aayog is established. Now the calculation of the poverty line is handed over to Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog also does utilize the data collected by NSSO for the purpose of consumption expenditure for the purpose of building up poverty line. The National Planning Committee, rupees 15 to rupees, that is this particular point tells us what were the attempts that were made for the purpose of estimating poverty in India apart from Dadabhai Naoroji. After Dadabhai Naoroji, National Planning Committee estimated that those whose capacity is to spend rupees 15 to rupees 20, they are said to be above poverty line, and those whose capacity is to spend lesser than this particular range of rupees per year, then such family is said to be suffering from poverty. Dandekar and Rath 2250 calories. Then Alak Committee, then Laktawala Committee, Tendulkar Committee. So these were some of the committees which have made trials for the purpose of estimating poverty in India. You can see the table over here, which tells us in 1951, the rural poverty was 47.3, urban poverty was 35.4. So urban poverty was comparatively lesser than the rural poverty, and total poverty happened to be 45.31%. That is, out of every 100 persons, 45 persons were suffering from poverty. 2021, 25.7 were suffering from rural poverty, and urban poverty 13.7. Total poverty was 21.9. So due to the efforts made by the government in the form of implementation of the 12 5-year plans and prioritizing poverty alleviation programs, implementation of poverty alleviation programs and reduction of unemployment problem in India, possibly the positive effect was we were able to reduce the percentage of poverty from 45.31% to 21.9%. And if we come to the types of unemployment, so unemployment is an indicator of labor market conditions. Less employment means lower economic performance and leads to social distress and political turmoil. It reduces tax revenue and strains the government resources, harms country's reputation. So unemployment problem, if it is going to prevail in the economy, it is going to give these negative effects. Then we have different types of unemployment: cyclical unemployment caused by business cycles, frictional unemployment caused by shift of the labor for personal reasons or better opportunities from one job to another job, structural unemployment caused because of the structural backwardness of the economic system, underemployment caused due to lesser working hours resulting lesser pay, hidden unemployment when people do not belong to labor market statistics and are willing to work if chance given, seasonal unemployment caused due to off seasons. Disguised unemployment is a special type of unemployment which prevails in the agricultural sector of the Indian economy, where the additional laborers who are, or the marginal laborers or additional laborers who get employed in the agricultural sector, their contribution or their marginal productivity will be zero, but still they will be continuing in the employment or in the agricultural production. So even if we are going to remove these marginal farmers or extra laborers, agricultural production will not become zero. It remains stable. So such kind of extra people who are not adding anything to the agricultural production are considered as disguisedly unemployed. How the calculation of unemployment rate is done in India? Total labor force is equal to total employed labor plus total unemployed labor. If, for example, there are 10 million total labor employed and 0.5 million total unemployed labor, total labor force will be 10.5 million, and rate of unemployment, total labor unemployed divided by total labor force multiplied by 100. Here 0.5 million are labor unemployed, 10.5 million are the total labor force. When multiplied by 100, 4.7% is the unemployment rate. So quickly review, glance towards the causes of unemployment. Unemployment is caused because of high interest rates, which does not allow the firms to come forward for establishing more number of firms. A recession, which is also called as sluggish growth. Population increase, technological advancements and lack of skills, underdeveloped labor markets, and every economy, in spite of attaining higher growth rates, still suffers from some kind of unemployment, and that kind of unemployment is called as natural rate of unemployment. Estimation of unemployment in India. Ministry of Labour and Employment collects data and compiles and publishes unemployment rate in India every 10 years. We have unemployment reports which are published by National Sample Survey Organization, Labour Bureau report, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy reports, International Labour Organization reports also. So according to the government data, in 1983, 7.8 million people were absolute terms suffering from poverty. In 2005, it has increased rather from 7.8 million to 12.3 million. According to the current daily status unemployment rate, was 7.3% in 1999-2000, which increased to 8.3 in 2004 and 5. So another special aspect about this unemployment is unemployment in India is increasing continuously because the growth attained by Indian economy is considered as a jobless growth. What is this jobless growth? Attainment of higher average annual growth rate of gross value added with a corresponding lower average annual employment growth rate. And between 1980-81 to 1990-91, 8.66 was average annual growth rate, 0.53 was average annual employment growth rate. You can see that employment growth rate was 0.53%, but the average growth rate was 8.66%. According to the Pew report of 1819, About 18.6 million Indians are jobless. Another 393.7 million work in poor quality jobs vulnerable to displacement. So Indian labor force growing by 8 million per annum, but full-time jobs are not produced at this rate. So these are some of the unemployment trends in India, which we can go through. You can go through. The government has taken up several poverty alleviation, unemployment reduction programs, which are just listed out in these slides. You can just have a look over all these things and can in detail go for analysis. The next important interesting slide is about what were the previous questions which were asked about this topic, that is poverty and unemployment. If you can see the first one, what is human development? Discuss the importance and measurement of gross national happiness index. Describe the factors responsible for the low level of human development index of India during the last 2 decades. Human development index is an alternative to national income. Justify your answer and discuss the important anti-poverty programs implemented by Government of India. So previous questions are mostly concentrating on the human development index and poverty alleviation programs. So methods of measuring poverty in India, methods of measuring unemployment in India, and MGN, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme impact is also asked in the previous questions. Discuss the possible consequences of rural unemployment on the society and suggest 2 effective remedial measures. So the consequences of rural unemployment can be listed out as people moving towards cities, overcrowding in cities, and lack of human habitation in the rural areas. Then adjacent connectivity, the industrial sector of the small scale and the cottage industries, which are prevailing in rural areas, may also enter into deterioration due to the sluggishness or slackness in the rural areas because of rural unemployment. These are the 2 effects. And remedial measures is alternate employment opportunities have to be provided to the people in the rural areas also, so that there is not going to be any shifting of population from rural areas to urban areas. And relative poverty, what are the reasons for its presence in India, and the role of Gini coefficient as well as Lorenz curve for the purpose of measuring relative poverty. Then explain the possible limitations in the strategy for poverty alleviation adopted by the Government of India. Comment on the recent controversies relating to the estimates of rural-urban poverty in India. Important concepts of unemployment and employment which are used by National Sample Survey Organization, that is how NSSO tries to do the computation of unemployment on weekly basis, unemployment on fortnightly basis, unemployment on quarterly basis, unemployment on daily basis. The nature of economic growth in India is described as jobless growth. Do you agree with this view? Give arguments in favor of your answer. So with this, we come to the end of this particular session on poverty and unemployment. You can see that most of the questions are asking you to provide the information on poverty alleviation programs, human development index, and the jobless growth, which are the 3 important aspects which have the scope of being asked in Group 1 mains examinations. Thank you. Signing off.